I can't help but feel like there's a lot of negativity going around these days, especially on YouTube. And I'm not saying that's unwarranted. I think there's a lot to be negative about these days. I think economic conditions are not good. People are feeling a lot of pressure. I think, social media in general has made our lives largely worse, just even from like a mental health standpoint. But that being said, like I see my feed of videos or whatever, and it is just clouded by this sort of like general negativity. And like every video is kind of like 10 ways your life is now worse or whatever. Or like, here's a new thing to be like outraged about. I mean, that's kind of clickbait, right? Rage bait, whatever. That's not to say like I don't do that too. Like a lot of my videos are things that are like grinding my gears and I want to make like a post about it and just kind of get like some general feedback. But I've always said that I want to be largely positive or like end on a positive note. Because I'm always looking for like that feeling of I want to get excited about stuff, especially when it comes to things that I'm interested in. So like fashion, obviously. And that's not to say I won't still do videos that are like, look at big problem, because there's a lot of problems and I think we should talk about them. But I did want to make at least a video where the general focus was on the positive things that are going on and what there is to be excited about in the fashion realm. Because I think there actually is a lot, and I think we can kind of lose the forest for the trees sometimes. Even if we do as a community complain about things, because things can always be better. You want to highlight the things that need to be improved. We don't want to also lose sight of all the things that have made great strides along the way, if that makes sense. Before I get into my little list, if you haven't yet, please do subscribe to the channel. But let's get into it. The number one thing I think I want to focus on is that in fashion, there are more options than ever before. And that's a very broad thing to say, but that's because there's a lot of ways in which I mean that. The first one being just from, if you want to buy into fashion from either the high end or the low end, you have more options than ever. In terms of like, there's the super high end stuff that you can buy into, obviously. That's kind of always been there. Your Hermes or your Chanel or whatever, Brunello Cucinelli, Loro Piana, that kind of thing. Those brands still exist. They're still doing their thing. They probably always will. They're thriving, whatever. But there's also the exact opposite. There's the fast fashions of the world. There's the Sheins, the Zaras, the H&M, whatever, Amazon. If you want to be, let me be clear on something. I don't support like fast fashion. I don't think it's good. I think it is an overall negative, but we're not talking about negatives today. But I still will see like a lot of good fits, pieces, whatever, things that I think look really nice. And I'll be like, oh, where's that from? Shein, Amazon, whatever. And that's certainly problematic from a ripping off designs, not being sustainable, bad for the planet, bad for workers, whatever. But all I'm saying is, if you want to look stylish, you can do it on pretty much any budget these days. The other implications we can put to the side for now, because we're being positive. And then in the middle, there's a huge range of options. So to kind of piggyback on that point I was making about the kind of ethical concerns of it, I think you can dial in what your spend is versus kind of this sounds weird, your morals. So I mean to say, like, if you're like, man, I really don't want to support Shein, you can go for something that's a little bit more expensive if you can afford it, that maybe is not quite so bad for the planet. So you could start to go into like the Everlane, J. Crew, Banana Republic, something that's a little bit more elevated, probably a little bit better for the environment, not as much like the fast fashion space, but it's not gonna kill your bank account, you know what I mean? And just, on those brands, just remember to wait for the sale. So you've got a lot of options there when it comes to that. And we're just talking like the tier and the spend, but I think also you have more options in terms of the sheer amount of brands available right now to people, and the sheer amount of like creativity coming out of fashion and smaller brands and things like that. I mean, I was bagging on social media there for a second, but social media has really allowed small brands, the internet in general, to pop off in a way that they wouldn't have been able to even 10 years ago, 15 years ago. It's funny, I'm doing research for a Julius video, and Julius really broke out on the scene when they did like a Paris Fashion Week show. And that would still be true to this day to some extent. Like, you get that level of mass market, like eyeballs on something that you're doing, like it is going to pump up your numbers. But small boutique shops or whatever that you probably wouldn't have heard of, or would have had to like really grind and get like more like outside investors brought in to be able to like succeed in the way that they have now been able to build a significant word of mouth and actually sell through their D2C stuff, like on their websites or whatever, or through Instagram, whatever. In my mind, I just think of some smaller brands, like, may not be fair to call these like Instagram brands, but I discovered them through Instagram, but like House of Errors, No Faith Studios, Cody Phillips comes to mind. There's a number of brands and just pure discoverability through social media that there wasn't before that is huge, I think, for exposing people to new things and being able to really flex and expand your style, which is really cool. There's positives and negatives of social media. And even I would lump in with that, again, there's certainly some negatives to this, but fakes are better than ever. And if you want, like, regardless of what your stance is on fakes, I personally don't partake, but I see the appeal and I could make an argument for it, and I might one day. You know, if you want a collab shoe, you want a designer sneaker that is just, it's impossible for you to get it with your budget or whatever, dupes and fakes exist, and they are better than ever before. And the accessibility to them with the internet and everything is, and the community that's built around them. There's a ton of like forum and internet communities that you can like learn what the best batch is or whatever, and get in touch with certain reps or whatever, communicate through WhatsApp. And the experience is much less shady than it used to be of like going to Canal Street, you know what I mean? Or following some lady on the street handing you a laminated page with a bunch of dupes on it. With the added competition and eyeballs on them, they actually are made with like pretty decent materials. If you get to a point where, or like the whole super fakes thing, again, this comes with its own set of problems, but we're being positive today. Some people have actually said in some of my other videos in response to them that the rise of dupes and fakes has kind of put a lot of the big designer houses on their back heels a bit. And if that's the case, I actually think it's kind of a good thing, because it means that they're feeling more competition. I mean, it could go two ways. It could make them raise their prices and try to only focus on the core rich group. Or it can make them say like, hey, our prices are insane. Let's take a look back at this to see how we can win back this customer. It remains to be seen. But those options are out there if you want to be able to participate in fashion. You just couldn't before, and you don't have to walk that fast. Pivoting a little bit, but it's in a similar space. But in terms of like what people want to wear, the stigma of standing out a little bit and wearing like weird stuff, whatever, I think is largely gone. Like, I think dressing how you want, personal style, whatever, is much more mainstream now, and to the point that it's almost expected that you show your personality through your clothes a little bit more. You know, we don't need to go back that far, but like fashion used to be very gender heteronormative, whatever you want to call it, blending into the crowd. If you stood out, you were like a greaser or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, what's that guy doing wearing a leather jacket? He must be in a gang. You know what I mean? Whereas now, my view is skewed a little bit, I'm sure, because I work in a creative field. So in a way, we're like encouraged to dress in a way that shows off our personality. But I think that is somewhat true of not just creative fields, but like people in general. Like, I feel like it's tell me if I'm wrong. I feel like if you're like a lawyer in New York City, yeah, you're wearing a suit to work every day, or like an investment banker or something like that. Or if you have a work uniform, I mean, that's its own thing. But even then, you can slap on some black Yeezys. You know what I mean? But I'll give you just one example of like, my boss went to like a meeting with another agency, and their designers were wearing like really cool kind of out there stuff. Like, they looked like designers, he told me. And I think he wanted our people to like show that a little bit more. That's a level of encouragement that I think you would not have seen 20 years ago. I think the pandemic, to some extent, loosened dress codes a little bit even more, because people were wearing pajamas wherever they needed to get them back in the office. And that may change. They may start to, just like they've brought people back to the office, might start to kind of tighten the screws a little bit. But for now, I think that whole idea of a dress code is much more relaxed. And just in terms of society in general, again, I use the word heteronormativity, but like, you're still gonna get looks if you're a dude wearing like a skirt, or even something that's like along those lines, like some hakama pants or something like that. But I think it's never been better for doing that kind of thing. And I think you have a lot more power to, if someone gives you crap about it, to be like, what's your problem? You know what I mean? You have more people on your side. I think social media's helped with this one too. I think, it's funny, like even a couple short years ago, like the idea of the fit pic was not as much in like the mainstream lexicon. And now everyone knows what a fit pic is. You know what I mean? Like, hey, flick me up, I'm doing it for the gram. I'm doing it for the TikTok. And that's cool. Like, it's good that people are now so self-expressive, outwardly expressive with themselves, that it's like a thing to expect from others that they're going to put a fit together, for the function. Pivoting a little bit, I think this area needs a lot of work, but I think it is going in the right direction, and that is more of a focus on materials. I think, if you look back 70s and pre-70s, there's a lot more natural materials, wool, cotton, leather, things like that, a lot less synthetic materials, polyester, nylon, etc., acrylic. And that has slowly but surely bled its way into all of our clothes, to the point that it feels like most things now are like polyester, or at least like a poly blend. I'll do a brief aside and just say, like, I do, talk down on like polyester stuff a lot. From people in the industry, I have been made aware that, like, just because something has polyester in it doesn't mean that it's bad outright. Sometimes that feels a little like cope to me, and also it's kind of impossible for us as consumers to know what's good polyester versus bad. There's grades to everything. Like, there's bad cashmere and good cashmere, but at least if something is 100% cashmere or like a cashmere silk blend, I can be reasonably assured that it's pretty good. Whereas how do I know the difference between like a good polyester and a bad? If it's recycled polyester or something, at least there's that. There's a sustainability aspect to it, and we'll get to that. But that is to say, I feel like people are more than ever more educated on the topic of materials and clothes, and they are really starting to pay more attention to what they're putting on and before they're buying it. Like, I don't know about you guys, but I will twirl down that little like materials thing on anything I'm going to buy and just be like, what is this? What am I actually buying into? Going back to the quality materials thing, like, I like Sandro. I like a lot of the clothes that Sandro puts out, but with the prices that they command and the materials that they're putting this stuff together with, I'm always like, really? Like, that cost for a 50% polyester shirt, jacket, whatever, could be good again, I don't know. But I think that's really positive. If it's going to have the knock-on effect of, like, I hope anyway, that clothing manufacturers are going to start taking care of quality and materials again, natural, especially with all the gosh dang microplastics inside of our bloodstream and organs. I just saw a thing the other day, if I can find a screenshot, I'll put it up, but it was like the drawback from the high luxury brands because of like the scandals involved in workforce and stuff has made them, they're now like, oh, we are focusing on quality. Whereas before they were leaning into like their heritage, their logos basically. So we may actually be seeing a return to like quality craftsmanship and materials, even in like the high tier brands. I say even as if it's like that they shouldn't be doing that anyway. But that to me is a signal of like, maybe we'll see more of this. I think the goal is like us as consumers to keep paying attention and rewarding brands that are doing that, because it's really cool. Another one, and this is one of those ones that needs a lot of work. You could even like make an argument that it's bad right now. Sustainability in fashion. I think the problem is greenwashing. There's a lot of companies that like say they're sustainable, and so you go like, oh, good, and then no one ever bothers to look at their actual claims for sustainability. I shocked myself the other day because I was looking at the suit supply site, and they had a whole section about, I like their knits, leave me alone. They had a whole section about their sustainability, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to read that. And I looked at their section and saw like what they were talking about. It felt a little vague to me, but I didn't do like a super deep dive. But like, I think we as consumers should demand more of that and actually look into it. Like, if a company says they are sustainable, let's hold them to that. Was it COS? It might have been COS. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry, COS. But I think it was COS. Got in trouble for like having all these like lofty sustainability goals and then not really doing anything about it. Like, they just said like, yeah, we're sustainable, I guess. The reason why I say there's a lot of work to do there is, again, with more fast fashion stuff probably than ever before, the fashion industry in general is bad for the environment. I mean, let's just get that out of the way. Especially with more brands than ever. Like, the thing I'll say, guys, is like, I think all of us who are into fashion, there's a little part of our brain that's like, I could start a brand. I don't know. Everyone probably wants to like slap a cool logo on a t-shirt, but like, I encourage you not to do that. Just because there's too many. We have too many clothes. We don't need to be adding more. If someone out there wants to start a brand that's like focused on like upcycling, that's really cool. My wife just found it was a little market or whatever that we went to, but she took old clothes and like sewed them together to make new ones. It was really cool. Like, she had a Adidas shirt that my wife got that's like split down the center. She took these like t-shirts and added like flannel shirt sleeves to them to make like a totally new garment. And that's like a really good idea that's also sustainable. And along those lines, I'll pivot into buying secondhand and thrifting. I think has never been more popular. A lot of people, I don't actually remember this, to be honest with you, but I think for a long time there was a stigma against thrifting and buying secondhand that I think completely doesn't exist anymore at all. Thrifting is now like a cool, fun thing to do. It's like cool to thrift, and that's awesome. The negative is that a lot of stuff gets picked over or resold at a higher rate, but Again, we're focusing on positives here. It's very good that there's no judgment in buying something secondhand. You don't need to buy stuff new. And in fact, by looking at things that have like a little bit of history to them, a little bit of wear and tear and patina, you actually get something better out of it. And a lot of these clothes, like we don't need more new ones. You know what I mean? Like a leather jacket, like get it vintage, man. That stuff's gonna last forever. There's freaking World War II B-2 bomber jackets you can still get off eBay, which is sick. And you should. So that's really cool. I would just say we don't need to gentrify thrifting so much, because people do still need to buy clothes at the thrift who can't afford new ones. And, donate your clothes, obviously, if you can. I think this actually might be changing a little bit, but at least if we're coming out of it, we're still in it. I think resale is low. It was high like a couple of years ago, and I've noticed a significant dip in stuff. Like, the sneaker market is like pretty down bad. I was just looking this morning, shattered backboards under UNC Jordan 1s under retail. Like, that's cool. The really select poppin' pieces are still, man, I wanted some of those Maison Margiela Solomons, but not for me. And, depending on the brand, the resale is going to be crazy. Chrome. Breaking my chrome heart. This is a tricky one to say it's a positive, but I think it's at least moved in the right direction. I think there's a lot of work to be done again, but there is more of an eye on like diversity and inclusion in the fashion space. I think you definitely say body positivity is much better than it was even 10 years ago, with like every model being a stick. I think there's a lot of designers who focus more on different body types and again, to go back to the idea of there being more options than ever, there's more options than ever for different body types too. Like if you're big, you're tall or whatever, like there are entire brands dedicated to you. There kind of always have been, but like, the models on the runway, they don't all follow the same body type. And I think there is a lot more like diversity in the models, at least. I think there's a lot of work to be done on like the creative director side, though Wales Bonner did just get appointed to Hermes menswear. That's cool. It feels a little like a drop in the bucket. Pharrell Williams at Louis Vuitton obviously is dope. I think the big issue I have there is like the last, and I commented on this before, but the last like creative director switch up, I feel like a lot of the fashion brands were like retreating to like white men. Like, oh no, the industry's in trouble. Put up the white men bat signal. Pier Paolo Pacioli at Balenciaga, that kind of thing. But along with that, there is another positive I want to highlight, which is just all the change ups within the last year and a half, 2 years. Because I think this latest season's collections were actually a little bit more interesting. Like there's some big shakeups happening, like Demna going over to Gucci, JW Anderson at Dior, that are really interesting. Maison Margiela, Michael Ryder at Celine, Chanel, and Bottega, like really good, impressive, and interesting shows. I've seen a lot of people list out like who won Paris Fashion Week or whatever, and the lists change dramatically depending on who you talk to. That tells me that like there's no standout winner, and a lot of the stuff is interesting. So with a lot of change ups and switch ups comes, more interesting stuff. We'll see where that innovation goes, but at least for now, I think it's very exciting to see what comes next. It feels like a bit of a seismic shift. And then I think I'll just say like there's more inspiration than ever before, right? Again, one of the positives of social media is trends may come and go a little bit faster, but I think it's just because we're constantly being inspired by new things and seeing new ideas and people throwing something together that you maybe didn't see before and, okay, cool. Oh, that's something cool that I can hop on or whatever and try something new. It's a blessing and a curse, but like, I think it's a good thing to say, like, it's such easy access to inspiration. It used to be you had to like wait for a zine or whatever, or like the magazines kind of held the control of like what trends were going to be coming or whatever. Now that power is more in the hands of like the people in a sense, which you talk about like the pullback from luxury. I almost want to make a video on like, why do we need runway shows and luxury anymore? Why do we need fashion weeks anymore? Are they really where the trends are coming from? I'm not sure. I think the trends are kind of actually coming more out of like what people are wearing every day. And the fashion shows are actually like, it's almost reversed now. Like they're pulling inspiration from what people are actually wearing instead of vice versa, which is a really cool inversion and like kind of interesting spin on what we've seen in the past. So again, there's a lot to be excited about and there's a lot to work on. And I think a lot of us fashion bros, a lot of people who are like plugged into fashion are like trying to put our money where our mouth is and like pay attention to the materials and the sustainability of these brands and, thrift and not blow tons of money on new stuff all the time and overconsume. There's more of an attitude towards underconsumption which is great. That all being said, you know, I think it's fair to acknowledge that a lot of people are struggling right now. I mean, fashion is the least of many people's concerns. But I don't know. I just don't, you know, I think it's also important to balance the negativity with the positivity. And, you know, it can be kind of hard to live your life if you're just constantly being bombarded by negative messages. So think positive, okay? That's my Bob Ross bit for the day. Post a comment on the thing that you are most excited about in fashion. Is it a brand or a trend or just something, or you know, what did I miss? Is there something that that you think is actually really good right now that's going on that, you know, maybe wasn't the case a couple of years ago and it's got you excited to participate? But that's my bit for the day. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please do subscribe if you haven't yet, and I will catch you in the next one. See you guys.